In the cold silence of deep space, the human warship Resolute moved through a thick cloud of cosmic dust. The stars were faint here, hidden behind curtains of drifting particles, and the ship's dark hull blended with the shadows. Only the slow pulse of navigation lights revealed that it was not just another drifting rock dot inside the command deck. Captain Alara Vance stood at the wide observation window, her hands behind her back. Her gaze was fixed on the distant flashes of light, explosions blooming in the blackness far ahead. The Rathri-Vulek War had been raging for 3 long years. Whole systems had been stripped bare, their resources drained to feed the hunger of war. Ships lay shattered in forgotten orbits, and the cries for help from civilians had been swallowed by the noise of constant battle. Alara knew this war zone well, though humans had no stake in it. The United Earth Fleet had been monitoring from afar, sending aid where it could, but this mission was different. This time, humanity was not here to watch. They were here to step inside. Her first officer, Commander Yolan Rhodes, stepped up beside her. His face was tight with concern. "We've crossed the outer boundary, Captain. Long-range scans confirm. Heavy fighting in Sectors 9 and 12. Rathri, carriers and Vulek siege platforms, both sides in full engagement." Alara didn't look away from the window. "And civilian signatures?" Yolan hesitated. "Several, scattered among the wreck fields. Most of them adrift, no power. If the fighting shifts their way, they won't survive." For a long moment, there was silence between them. The low hum of the Resolute systems filled the room. Outside, the flashes grew brighter, the battles closer. Finally, Alara spoke, her voice calm but carrying the weight of decision. "Bring us in slow. Passive sensors only. No weapons online unless we need them." A ripple of surprise moved through the bridge crew, but no one questioned her. That was the thing about Alara Vance. Her orders were quiet, but they carried a kind of unshakable certainty. The Resolute was unlike any warship in the sector. Though modest in size compared to alien dreadnoughts, it carried technology the galaxy had never seen. Its gravity lens projectors could bend space just enough to redirect enemy fire. Its signal masking systems could slip past the most advanced detection grids. But Alara knew that raw firepower wasn't their real strength. Humanity's greatest weapon was something else: the ability to adapt, to turn even the smallest opening into an advantage. Beyond the dust cloud, the war zone came into full view. Thousands of kilometers away, Rathri cruisers formed a defensive wall, their crescent-shaped hulls bristling with glowing weapons. On the opposite side, the Vulek siege platforms rotated slowly, each one a floating fortress armed with enough cannons to cut a fleet in half. Between them, the void was littered with debris, broken hulls, drifting escape pods, and silent stations that had once been thriving trade hubs. A junior sensor officer spoke up, her voice trembling. "Captain, I'm picking up a distress signal. Origin, a civilian transport, designation unknown, multiple life signs. They're right in the crossfire." Alara turned toward her. Range, 30,000 kilometers from the main engagement line. No shields, minimal power. They won't last more than 15 minutes if someone notices them. Yolan leaned in. "Captain, if we move now, both sides will detect us. We'll be walking into their targeting range." Alara studied the tactical display. 2 massive fleets, locked in combat, neither willing to give ground. Between them, a single helpless ship drifted like a leaf in a storm. Her jaw tightened. "They're not soldiers," she said. "They're families, traitors, people who thought they could escape before the fighting reached them." Yolan knew what was coming before she said it. "Helm," Alara ordered, "adjust course toward the distress signal. Plot a path through the debris fields. Keep us masked until the last possible second." The Resolute shifted its heading. The hum of the engines deepened as the ship moved out of the dust cloud and into open space. From this distance, the civilian transport was just a speck of light, flickering weakly against the darkness as they drew closer. Alien transmissions filled the comm channels, Rathery and Vulek frequencies, overlapping in a chaotic storm of voices, warnings, battle commands, target locks. None of it directed at the humans yet, but that would change soon. Ilara felt the weight of every life on that transport. She had read the mission brief. This war was not humanity's fight, but the moment she saw the helpless drift of that vessel. The decision had already been made. She spoke softly, but the whole bridge heard her. If humanity has a place in this galaxy, it's not standing on the sidelines. Outside the viewport, the combat zone loomed larger. The Resolute's sleek frame glided forward, a single ship entering the heart of a storm that had swallowed countless others. And though no one on the alien fleets knew it yet, the moment that warship crossed into the battle's edge, the course of the conflict began to shift. The Resolute drifted deeper into the war zone, its engines running at low power to avoid drawing attention. Inside the command deck, the lights were dim, and the only sound was the quiet beeping of the sensor displays. The ship was a shadow among shadows, gliding past the edges of great fleets, locked in battle. On the encrypted comm channels, voices murmured in dozens of alien tongues. Some were crisp and cold commanders issuing orders to their crews. Others were sharp with panic, pilots calling for support. But mixed among the chaos were quieter transmissions, messages not meant for open ears. They say humans have entered the combat zone. One voice whispered in Rathery, the translation appearing instantly on the crew's display. Only one ship. But you know what they say about humans. A Vulek officer's voice replied from another channel, equally hushed. I don't believe it. No species is foolish enough to fly into this mess alone. It must be a trick, Captain. Ilara Vance listened without comment. She knew how rumors worked in wartime. A single unexpected event, even something small, could spread like fire, changing how soldiers thought and acted. And the idea of a human ship here, in the deadliest battlefield in the sector, was more than enough to make people nervous. Commander, Yalan moved to her side. They're talking about us already. Half of them think we're here to fight. The other half think we're spies. Ilara's eyes stayed on the tactical screen. Let them wonder. Fear and curiosity can slow a war just as much as force. The distress signal from the civilian transport still blinked faintly on their display. The Resolute was closing the gap, but every kilometer brought them nearer to the fleet's detection ranges. From the sensor pit, Ensign Lyra spoke. Captain, I'm detecting multiple encrypted calls for help. Not just from the transport. There are signals from both Rathery and Vulek sources. Yalan frowned. Soldiers. Lyra shook her head. Some, yes, but most are civilians, refugees, hiding in derelict ships, miners trapped in the asteroid belts. They're all caught between the fleets. Ilara felt a slow weight settle in her chest. It wasn't just one transport in danger. There were dozens, maybe hundreds of lives, scattered like debris through this war zone. Log every signal, she ordered. We'll help who we can. The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. Helping one transport was already risky. Trying to save more could draw the fury of both armies. But no one voiced their doubt as they moved closer to the heart of the conflict. The scale of the war revealed itself. Massive Rathery cruisers swept through the darkness like predators, their long wings glowing with lines of blue energy. The Vulek platforms answered with bright lances of plasma, carving through the void. Between each exchange, ships burst into silent fire, their pieces tumbling away into forever. Ilara studied it all, her mind piecing together possibilities. The Resolute's signal masking system was keeping them invisible for now, but once they acted, that would change. The moment they turned on weapons or shields, both sides would see them. Captain, Yalan said quietly, if we try to rescue anyone, we'll expose ourselves. We'll have every gun in range pointed at us. Ilara looked at him. Maybe. Or maybe they'll be too busy trying to figure out what we're doing. That was the human way, she thought, never charging in blindly, but never stepping back when lives were at stake. Suddenly, a faint tone sounded on the comm. It was the civilian transport again, but now a voice broke through the static. "This is the Sunflare. Please, anyone, we've lost life support. Children are." The transmission cut off, swallowed by interference. The bridge fell silent. Every crew member had heard the small, desperate voice. Lyra's hands tightened on her console. Jalen spoke first, his voice low. "We can't ignore that." "No," Ilara agreed. "We can't." She turned to the helm. "Plot a rescue course. Minimal power. Slip between the fleets before either can lock us. If they try, we'll be gone before they fire." The Resolute's engines whispered to life, and the ship angled toward the bright red dot of the Sunflare on the display. Outside, the great fleets continued their dance of destruction, unaware, or perhaps unsure, of the lone vessel moving through their shadow. As they advanced, alien chatter continued across the encrypted bands. The whispers had shifted now. "I've seen it," one Rathri pilot claimed. "The human ship is real. It moves like nothing I've ever seen." "They're not here for war," another said, voice uncertain. "They're rescuing people." But why? No one had an answer. And as the Resolute slipped ever closer to the helpless transport, the rumors? The Resolute moved like a shadow, weaving between drifting wreckage as it closed in on the Sunflare. The civilian transport was little more than a broken shell now, its hull pitted with burns, its lights dim and flickering. Captain Ilara Vance stood at the center of the bridge, eyes locked on the forward display. The war between the Rathri and the Volek raged not far ahead, their weapons lighting up the darkness in bursts of brilliant blue and gold. The Sunflare was right in the middle of it, an unarmed vessel caught between giants. Life support on. "The Sunflare is almost gone," reported Ensign Lyra. Her voice was tight. "They have minutes at best." Commander Yolen leaned over her console. "And if we go in fast, both sides will detect us instantly." Ilara's gaze didn't waver. "Then we make sure they can't hit us." She tapped a control on her armrest. "Activate gravity lens projectors. Narrow focus. I want a corridor, 10 kilometers wide, bending any incoming fire." The crew moved at once. Invisible waves rippled from the Resolute's hull, distorting the fabric of space just enough to redirect energy beams and projectiles. To anyone watching, it would look as if shots simply missed their mark, but in truth, the Resolute was bending the very path of destruction away from its course. "Lens field holding," a technician confirmed. "We can give the Sunflare a safe approach path." Ilara nodded. "Helm, take us in." The Resolute glided forward, engines whispering, slipping into the narrow corridor of safety it had created. Around them, deadly beams passed harmlessly by, arcing away into the void. The bridge was silent, except for the faint hum of the systems. Every crew member focused on their station. On the main screen, the Sunflare grew larger. Its hull was scarred, sections open to vacuum, and no defensive shields remained. Inside, Ilara knew, frightened civilians were clinging to the last pockets of breathable air. "Open a channel," she ordered. Static filled the bridge before a weak voice broke through. "This is Sunflare. Who is this?" "This is the human ship Resolute," Ilara said clearly. "We're here to get you out. Prepare for docking. Hold steady." There was a long pause, as if the voice on the other end couldn't quite believe. It then, shakily, "We came," Ilara confirmed. "Hold on a little longer." As the Resolute drew alongside the transport, the docking clamps extended, locking onto the Sunflare's battered hull. A soft shudder ran through the deck as the airlock sealed. "Docking complete," Yalen reported. "Transfer corridors are secure." "Begin evacuation," Ilara ordered. The rescue teams moved quickly, pulling civilians through the narrow connecting passage. Children clung to parents, their faces pale from lack of air. An old Vulek trader limped forward, helped by 2 crew members. A Rathari family, 3 adults, and a small child, stumbled through, their eyes wide with disbelief. On the bridge, Lyra's voice cracked slightly as she read the updates. 47 aboard so far. 73. 112. Ilara kept her expression steady, but inside she felt the weight lifting, one life at a time. This was why she was here. Not to claim victory, not to fly the flag of Earth in enemy skies, but to pull people out of the fire. Suddenly, the sensors blinked. "Captain," called the weapons officer. "Both fleets have noticed us. Rathari and Vulek ships are adjusting position. They're scanning us." Yalan swore under his breath. "They think we're siding with the other side." "Maintain lens field," Ilara said sharply. "No weapons, no aggression. Just hold the corridor." Seconds stretched like hours. On the main display, the icons of enemy ships shifted, weapons charging, but none fired. Perhaps they were still unsure what the humans were doing. Perhaps the chaos of the battle made them hesitate. Finally, Lyra called out again. "Evacuation complete, Captain. All civilians aboard. The sun flare is empty." Ilara took a deep breath, released docking clamps. "Helm, get us back into the debris field, slow and low." The Resolute detached from the dying transport and slipped away, disappearing once more into the shadows. Behind them, the sunflare drifted quietly, its purpose now served. On the alien channels, new whispers began. "They saved them," a Rathari voice murmured. "Not soldiers, civilians." "They didn't fire once," said another. "Humans. What are they doing here?" Ilara listened, but said nothing. She knew the first move had been made, not just toward saving lives, but toward changing the way these fleets saw humanity, far from home, in a war they had no reason to fight. The Resolute had lit a tiny spark of something greater than fear, and Ilara intended to make sure it kept burning. The Resolute floated in the shadow of a shattered freighter, its dark hull almost invisible against the twisted wreckage. Inside the command deck, Captain Ilara Vance studied the tactical map projected. In the air before her, Sectors 9 and 12 flashed red, the most dangerous regions of the combat zone. Between them stretched a narrow corridor, but it was no safe passage. Rathari and Vulek forces were fully engaged there, trading fire, with enough power to turn entire fleets to drifting debris. Commander Yolan stood beside her, his arms folded tightly. "You're not seriously thinking of taking us through Sector 12? Ilara didn't look up. "It's the only way to reach those stranded diplomats before the battle shifts." "Captain," Yolan said carefully, "those are the leaders who refused to leave when the war started. Both sides have already branded them as traitors. If we go in there, we'll be surrounded by 2 enemies at once." "Not enemies," Ilara corrected softly. "Just people who don't understand us yet." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. They'd seen what happened to ships caught between the Rathari flagship and the Vulek siege platforms. There was never enough left to salvage. Ensign Lyra hesitated before speaking. "Captain, there are hundreds of cloaked mines in that sector. Even if the fleets don't target us, one wrong move could." "I'm aware," Ilara interrupted gently. She leaned closer to the map. "That's why we'll make them think we're not there at all." She began outlining the plan. The Resolute would slip into the corridor under full signal masking, running cold to avoid detection. At the same time, they would deploy drone swarms to send out false sensor readings, making it appear as though the human ship was somewhere else entirely. In the chaos of battle, even the most advanced targeting systems could be fooled. Jalen shook his head. "This is still a gamble." "All missions are," Ilara replied. "But this one is worth it." The bridge fell into a quiet rhythm of preparation. Engineers fine-tuned the signal mask. Drone operators loaded the launch tubes. Navigation plotted. A twisting path through the drifting debris and invisible mines. Every small step mattered. One miscalculation, and the Resolute would be nothing but another wreck in the void. When all was ready, Ilara gave the order. "Helm, take us in." The engines rumbled softly as the Resolute eased forward. Outside, the drone swarms launched, fanning out into the darkness like a school of silver fish. Each one projected faint energy signatures, drawing the attention of enemy scanners far from the Resolute's true position. From the bridge, they could see the war unfolding in sharp detail now. The Rathri flagship, a great crescent of black steel, unleashed volleys of blue plasma toward the Vulek siege platforms, which responded with beams so bright they cut through the dust clouds like sunlight. The Resolute slid between them, unseen, halfway through the sector. The Diplomat's shuttle appeared on the sensors, a small craft drifting without power, tumbling slowly through space. It carried no weapons, no shields, only a faint life support signal. "Docking trajectory plotted," Lyra announced. "We'll need to match their rotation to connect safely." Ilara nodded. "Do it." The maneuver was delicate. The Resolute rotated slowly, aligning perfectly with the shuttle's spin. Docking clamps extended, locking on with a faint metallic thud. Inside the shuttle, the stranded diplomats stared in shock as the airlock hissed open. Humans in dark blue uniforms stepped inside, offering oxygen masks and steady hands. On the bridge, Yalan monitored the rescue feed. 10 aboard. 15. 20. That's the last of them. Just as the final diplomat stepped onto the Resolute, the sensor alarms blared. A Rathri frigate had broken formation, its scans now sweeping dangerously close to the human warship's position. "They're looking for us," Lyra warned. "Then give them something to find," Ilara said calmly. "Drone pattern, Beta." The operators tapped in the command. Far to the east of their actual position, a cluster of drones began mimicking the Resolute's exact engine signature. The Rathri frigate's sensors locked onto it at once. Veering away in pursuit, the crew let out a collective breath, but Ilara's eyes stayed on the map. "We're not clear yet. Helm, get us back into cover." The Resolute slid into the shadow of a drifting battleship husk, disappearing once more into the debris. Only when the red glow of Sector 12 began to fade behind them did the crew allow themselves to relax as the rescued diplomats were led to the medbay. One of them, a tall Rathri elder with tired eyes, paused to look at Ilara. "You risked your lives for us," he said. "Why?" Ilara's answer was simple. "Because someone had to." And with that, the Resolute turned its bow toward the next call for help, leaving behind 2 confused alien fleets and a corridor of space, where, for a brief moment, no one had fired a single shot. The Resolute drifted at the edge of the war zone once more, its engines on low power. The bridge was quiet, but the air carried a subtle tension. Captain Ilara Vance sat in her command chair, watching the battle unfold on the wide tactical display. 2 massive fleets faced each other across a narrow gulf of space. Rathri warships glowed like curved blades under the starlight, their blue weapons charging for the next strike. The Vulek platforms turned slowly, aiming their long beams toward the enemy. Every moment felt like the breath before a storm. Commander, Yalan broke the silence. "They've been searching for us since Sector 12. Scans from both fleets keep sweeping through the debris fields." "They won't find us," Ilara replied, her voice steady. "Not unless we want them to." She tapped the edge of the display, zooming in on the densest part of the battlefield. "If we're going to stop the next strike, we need to change how they see this war, how they see us." Yolan frowned. "How do you propose we do that?" "With an illusion," Ilara said simply. The plan was bold, maybe even reckless. The Resolute would project holographic fleet images, creating the appearance of dozens of human warships arriving all at once. Combined with carefully timed drone emissions, it would fool enemy sensors into reading these illusions as real ships. Lyra, looked up from her console, her eyes wide. "Captain, if they believe there's an entire human fleet here, they might panic." "That's the point," Alara said. "Fear is stronger than certainty. If both sides hesitate long enough, we can push them toward talking instead of firing." Preparations began immediately. The crew worked in near silence, the only sounds the hum of power conduits and the soft clicks of control panels. The ship's advanced projectors came online, hidden emitters along the hull, ready to paint the void with convincing images. Fleet array charged. The operations officer confirmed. ELARA stood. "Let's give them something to see." A moment later, the darkness around the Resolute shimmered. Then, like ghostly giants emerging from the void, a dozen massive shapes appeared. More followed, sleek, angular warships bearing the insignia of the United Earth Fleet. They hung in space, their hulls gleaming under distant starlight, their weapons glowing faintly. From the alien fleet's perspective, it must have been a shock. One heartbeat there had been nothing, and the next, an entire human armada filled the space between them. Almost instantly, the encrypted comm channels erupted with chatter. Multiple human vessels detected. A Rathery voice barked. "Repeat, multiple?" "They're forming a blockade line." On another channel, a Vulek commander spoke sharply. "We had no intelligence on this fleet. Are they allied with the Rathery, or us?" The Resolute stayed hidden among its own illusions, its true position masked by the drone's broadcasting matching. Engine signatures. JALEN leaned toward Ilara. "They're hesitating." "No one's firing," Alara nodded. "Good. Keep the projections moving, slow and steady. Make it look like we're preparing for something big." As the standoff stretched, Alara sent out a different kind of signal, encrypted messages to both Rathery and Vulek command ships. The content was simple. "This battle can end. Talk before it's too late." For long minutes, there was no response. The fleets hung in stillness, their weapons armed but quiet, their captains weighing the risk of fighting an unknown force. Then, a voice broke through on the Rathery channel. "Human vessel, we will hear what you have to say." Almost at the same time, a reply came from the Volek flagship. "If the humans are offering terms, we will listen." The crew exchanged glances, a spark of hope flickering across the tense faces. "They're talking," Lyra whispered. Ilara allowed herself a small smile. "That's all we need for now." The projections held their positions, an unspoken reminder of the power the aliens believed was gathered here. Yet in truth, there was still only one human warship, a single vessel shaping the flow of an entire war. As the first cautious exchanges began between Rathery and Vulek negotiators, Ilara leaned back in her chair. She knew the illusions wouldn't hold forever. Sooner or later, both sides would realize the truth. But sometimes, she thought, the truth could wait, at least until the fighting stopped. The war zone was quieter now. Not silent, never silent, but quieter. The great Rathery and Vulek fleets still faced each other, weapons ready. Yet neither had moved to strike since the arrival of the Phantom human fleet. From the bridge of the Resolute, Captain Alara Vance studied the updated scans. The holographic warships still held position, their false signatures drifting like patient predators. But Alara knew this fragile pause could break at any moment. Commander Yolan approached her side. "Talks have started between their command ships," he reported. "But they're still exchanging threats between every sentence. This could collapse fast." "It will," Ilara said quietly, "if we don't cut the legs out from under this war." Yellen frowned. "Meaning, wars run on fuel and weapons," Ilara said. "We can't stop them from hating each other, but we can make sure they don't have the tools to keep fighting." That's when Lyra spoke up from the sensor station. "Captain, I've found something. A Rathery supply convoy, heavily armed escort, moving through the outer belts. And there's more, a Vulek transport group on the far side, carrying energy cells and munitions." both headed straight for their fleets. Ilara's eyes narrowed. If those supplies arrive, the war starts again. The bridge grew tense. Everyone knew the implication. To stop those convoys, they'd have to risk breaking the fragile balance they had just created. But Ilara's voice was calm when she gave the order. Set course for the Rathery convoy first. No direct engagement. We take what they have and put it where it's needed most. The Resolute broke from the Illusion fleet, slipping away under full signal mask. The stars blurred past as they moved toward the asteroid belt. It didn't take long to find the Rathery. Ship's 6 cargo haulers flanked by 3 heavy escorts. The haulers were enormous, each carrying enough supplies to feed and arm a fleet for months. Yalone glanced at Ilara. They'll see us coming if we try to board them. They won't see us at all, Ilara replied. Drone pattern Gamma. Bring the escorts chasing ghosts while we take the haulers. The drones launched, scattering across the field with perfect imitation of the Resolute's energy signature. The Rathery escorts broke formation, peeling away to hunt what they thought was the intruder. The Resolute slid into the convoy's blind spot, locking docking clamps to the first hauler. Boarding crews moved swiftly, transferring control of the cargo holds within an hour. The Rathery convoy's supplies were loaded into the Resolute storage bays and auxiliary hauler pods. The ship detached, vanishing back into the shadows. But instead of destroying the stolen cargo, or using it to strengthen any side in the war, Ilara gave a different order. Helm, set course for the refugee camps on Arcus Station. Yalan blinked. You're giving it all away. Not giving, Ilara said. Redirecting. Every ration pack, every energy cell to the people this war has forgotten. When the Resolute arrived at Arcus Station, the sight that greeted them was enough to silence even the most hardened crew member. Thousands of civilians, Rathery, Vulek, and other species crowded the docking bays, their faces tired, their clothes ragged. They had been living on scraps, watching the war rage beyond their walls. As the supplies began to unload, the mood shifted. Children laughed as food was passed out. Families clutched energy cells that would power heaters and lights through the cold nights. Even the station's guards, neutral volunteers from many worlds, looked at the humans with gratitude. Word spread quickly. Messages traveled from station to station, ship to ship. The human warship was feeding the people, not the fleets. Back on the Resolute, Lyra read the latest chatter aloud. If they take the war's teeth, maybe the war will end, someone says. Another calls us, the enemy of the war itself. Ila allowed herself a small smile at that. A title I'll accept. But not everyone was grateful. That same day, new transmissions reached them, this time from an angry Rathery commander whose convoy they had taken. Human vessel. The deep metallic voice growled, "You interfere in matters beyond your understanding. You have made enemies on both sides. Leave this sector, or be destroyed." Yalan looked at Ilara, waiting for her answer. She didn't hesitate. Tell them no. Tell them we'll leave when the last civilian is safe. And with that, the Resolute set a new course, straight toward the Vulek supply group. The crew knew. It was dangerous. They knew they were making enemies of powers that could crush them. But they also knew this. Every shipment they redirected was another day the guns stayed silent. In the quiet hum of the bridge, Ilara's voice carried a resolve, as steady as the stars outside. Wars feed on fear, hunger, and hate. We're going to starve this one until it has nothing left to grow on. The Resolute had been running operations for days, rescuing civilians, redirecting supplies, and slipping between fleets like a ghost. But such actions could not go unnoticed forever. Captain Ilara Vance knew it was only a matter of time before someone struck back. That time came sooner than she expected. Captain Lyra called from her console, her voice tight. Multiple signatures ahead and behind. I think we're boxed in. On the main display, red markers appeared all around the Resolute Rathery cruisers closing in from the front. Vulek interceptors, sweeping in from the rear. The trap had been set perfectly. Yolan stepped closer to Ilara's chair. They've finally agreed on something destroying us. Ilara studied the tactical map with calm eyes. They think they have us surrounded. Lyra's hands hovered over her controls. With respect, Captain, they do, but Ilara's mind was already moving. She knew brute force was not the answer. The Resolute could fight, but in a battle like this, even victory would mean destruction for the ship and crew. No, they needed a way to turn this trap into an advantage. Bring the atmospheric dispersal weapon online, she said suddenly. The crew hesitated. The dispersal weapon was not lethal. It wasn't even designed for combat. It released massive clouds of ionized gas into space, meant for planetary weather manipulation. But in a crowded battlefield, those clouds could do something else entirely. Blind sensors and distort targeting systems. Ready, the launch bays. Ilara continued. When I give the word, we flood the area. Helm plot a course right between the Ratheri and Vulek ships. Close enough that they'll have to see each other to avoid firing on us. Jalen's eyebrows rose. You're making them work together. Just for a moment, Ilara said with the faintest smile. The trap tightened. Alien voices filled the com channels, demanding surrender. Warnings lit up the displays as targeting locks formed around the Resolute. The moment stretched, heavy and still. Then Ilara gave the order. Dispersal now. The Resolute's launch bays opened, releasing great plumes of glowing ionized gas. They spread quickly, curling through the void like mist in water. Within seconds, the space around the Resolute was a swirling, shimmering fog. Enemy targeting. Systems began to falter. Weapon locks dropped. Communication between the Ratheri and Vulek ships turned sharp and confused. Helm, take us through, Ilara commanded. The Resolute surged forward, cutting a path directly between the two enemy formations. As the ship moved, Ilara opened every com channel, Ratheri, Vulek, and civilian, and broadcast a single message. Rescue in progress. All ships hold fire, or risk hitting your own. It was a lie, but one perfectly timed. In the confusion, both fleets hesitated, unwilling to shoot through the gas without clear targets. For a few tense minutes, the Resolute was invisible, slipping through the heart of the trap while its enemies were too busy avoiding each other's fire. But Ilara wasn't finished. From deep within the ionized clouds, the Resolute's drones, launched, programmed with a daring task to attach themselves to stranded ships from both sides and push them into safe zones. Small Ratheri patrol, craft, and Vulek escape pods, long forgotten in the chaos of war, began to drift toward neutral space. On alien comms, voices shifted from orders to confusion. Our pod is moving. Someone's towing us. Rescue drones. From the humans. By the time the clouds began to thin and sensors cleared, the Resolute was gone. Dozens of rescued survivors, Ratheri, Vulek, and others, now floated far from the battle, guided toward safety by the very ship their fleets had tried to destroy. Back on the bridge, the crew let out slow breaths of relief. They won't underestimate us again, Yellen said quietly. No, Ilara agreed. But they might start to understand us. She knew the Resolute's work was nearly done here. The war had not ended, but seeds had been planted. Hesitation, doubt, and the faint idea that maybe humans were not enemies at all. Still, one final move remained. One gesture that could turn this from a series of rescues into the beginning of something bigger. ELARA. Single quotes. Eyes settled on the stars ahead. Prepare for departure, she said softly. But we leave them with something they won't forget. Asterisk. The Resolute floated in the stillness beyond the war zone. Behind it, the distant flashes of weapons were fading, replaced by the cold, quiet light of the stars. On the bridge, Captain Ilara Vance stood at the main viewport, her hands resting lightly on the console. Around her, The crew moved with the quiet energy that followed a long mission. There was relief, but also the heavy awareness that what they had done here would not be forgotten. For better or worse, Commander Yalin joined her. The fleets have pulled back. No shots fired in over an hour. Alara nodded. And the survivors? Safe, Yalin said. Every pod, every civilian ship we helped has reached neutral space or a refuge station. Our drones are still guiding the last group in. A small, tired smile touched Alara's face. Then we did what we came here to do. For days, the Resolute had been in constant motion, rescuing those in need, stealing the fuel from the war itself, and escaping traps. That should have destroyed them. They had not fired a single shot in anger, yet their presence had changed the rhythm of an entire battlefield. Lyra's voice broke the quiet. Captain, incoming transmissions. From both sides, Yolin raised an eyebrow. That can't be. Good. Lyra glanced at her display. There. Not threats. Rathri Command says they will consider our message. Vulek leadership says they will explore discussion. She paused, a little wonder in her tone. I think they might actually talk. Ilara didn't reply immediately. She knew better than to believe peace would come so easily, but she also knew the hardest part, breaking the endless cycle of attack and counterattack, had begun. She stepped forward, addressing the crew. We're leaving this sector. Our job here is done. But remember this, the people we saved. We'll tell their stories. Every soldier who saw us and didn't fire will remember that moment. And somewhere, maybe in weeks or years, that memory will stop someone from pulling a trigger. The crew absorbed her words in silence, their faces thoughtful. As the Resolute turned toward open space, Alara gave one last order. Broadcast the departure signal. It was not a message of victory or threat, just a simple statement sent, on all open channels. We came to save lives. We leave now. May you find peace. The words carried through the void, reaching ships on both sides, and even the far-off refugee stations. For some, it was just a curious note from a strange human ship. For others, it was something more, a reminder that even in the middle of destruction, someone had chosen to do good without asking for anything in return. Minutes later, the warship slipped beyond the range of the combat sensors. The battles faded into small points of light until they were nothing at all. On the quieter come bands. Alien voices spoke in low tones. They left. A Rathari officer asked. They could have stayed and taken sides, a Vulek replied. But they didn't. They just left. No one had an easy answer for why. Back on the Resolute, the bridge crew relaxed for the first time in days. Some leaned back in their chairs, closing their eyes. Others stared out at the stars, the stress slowly leaving their faces. Yalan looked at Ilara. You know they'll still fight. The war isn't over. I know, Ilara said. But maybe it's a little smaller now. And maybe the next time they see a human ship, they'll remember this one. The hum of the engines deepened as the ship accelerated, stars stretching into lines of light. The Resolute was already heading toward its next mission. Another troubled corner of the galaxy where quiet hands and steady courage were needed. In the records of the Rathari and Vulek, the day would be remembered as the day the war paused. No one would agree on the details. Some would claim the humans had brought a fleet. Others would say it was a single ship with impossible tricks. But all of them would agree on one thing. The human warship had come and left without taking anything except the wounded and the lost. And in time, that story would grow. Passed from pilot to pilot, from station to station, until it became more than just a memory. It would become a warning and a hope.